This is the second episode. We did the pilot and everything went great.
I'm not sure I'm comfortable with this.
Okay, it's okay. It'll be all right. Do
and
you trust
nobody's
me?
going to see this.
Nobody's going to see this. Do you trust me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right.
So, we need to practice drama, humor, okay? So, let's start angry face, happy face.
Okay. Do I have to make the noises or something?
You kind of have to do... Oh, hey, look at that. The light was on. Hi, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Gaming with Intention, the Bodhana-Cast. Please don't hurt me.
You lied to me.
It's all for the talent. It's all for the people. Would you do it for the people, James? Would you do it for the people?
Only for the people.
Only for the people. So, as I said, welcome to the second episode of Gaming with Intention, the Bodhana-Cast. Episode 2 is, wait for it, and you'll find out why in just a second. We are your hosts.
I'm actually making them wait.
I'm making them wait. Of course.
That's a scumbag thing to do.
Yes, but it's funny, Close. Actually,
Teaser.
It was the day, yeah.
Go.
I am one of your hosts. I'm Jack Berkenstock and Jr. I'm executive director of the Bodhana Group, which is kind of where the Bodhana comes from, the Bodhana-Cast. And we're a nonprofit that uses gaming, whether it be tabletop role-playing or board games, as a therapeutic, educational, and skill-building modality and approach. Who are you? No.
Who are you?
Who are you?
I am the other host, James Kirk, aka the Captain. I'm a volunteer with the Bodhana Group that has had many wonderful years.
Hey, we have a running gag.
We do. We
That
did
makes it
last time.
stick. Let's stick to the story.
Yeah, so I've been volunteering with Bodhana for some time. I help out with several different projects. I've game mastered for them, things like that, and I guess they feel like I have some of the chops necessary to talk about things.
We need the dudes.
Okay.
So, as we kind of said before, the purpose of this whole show, if you're just joining us for our second episode, is that what we do is we're kind of a review show with a different bend. So our goal is not to merely talk about how pretty the art is or how nice the mechanics and things are. Our goal is to talk about how can you take this game and utilize it in an alternate way. You know, can this game have benefits beyond just being a recreational activity? So then, you know, to that end, we review the game in a way that kind of tells you about what it's about and, you know, who makes it and how it works. But then we talk and break down the skills that the game is teaching. And we also, at the end of the episode, give you some lovely little takeaways, things that you could do either in your home, in your classroom, or in your session if you would happen to be a counselor or a therapist. And obviously the advice would apply to the environment.
Right. So. Absolutely. And this is adjunct therapy and not full-on therapy, so make sure that if you are engaging in therapy, that you are under the care of a professional while attempting to do any of the things like this. And do not, if you are not a professional, don't do the therapy portion.
Yes.
Okay? Can do more harm than good.
Yes, most definitely.
That's what I read. Okay, so as with every show that you're going to see, we have a small themed thing that Jack and I try to do to each other, throw each other off in the beginning.
Hey!
Because we're real people too. And today, since we're going to be discussing superheroes and supervillains and all things legendary.
Ha! Wait for it!
They don't have to anymore, I said it.
Oh.
Where were you on that? So yeah, we're going to do a small bit, and then we're going to get into things. So, I would like to call this, Who Was That Masked Person? Alright?
That's very gender respectful.
It was, thank you. I
Yes.
did both. So, what we're going to do with this segment is Jack and I have prepared two superheroes, or superheroesses.
Super entities.
Super entities.
Pulling it back.
Wow. That we have a name and a superpower, and based on a multiple choice of famous people, we have to guess who that super person is, like their alter ego. Okay? Here's how this is going to work. Jack!
Yes, my captain, my captain.
Your first superhero is Mr. All the Things Man. This superhero has the ability to succeed at everything, even when they're not supposed to. Is this superhero Chris Pratt, Pierce Brosnan, or Dwayne The Rock Johnson?
Oh, what? See, I was going to go with Carrot Top, but he's not an option.
He's not. He doesn't
no.
succeed at anything.
Okay.
Not even being red-haired.
He's quite buff.
Yeah, alright.
Wow, that is tough. That is tough. I am going to have to go from the underdog streak. I'm going to guess Mr. Chris Pratt.
And you would be wrong!
What?
Yeah, Chris Pratt has never been a wrestler, so he hasn't really succeeded at everything. However, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, whenever somebody tells him to do something,
No, I'm just
he's
kidding.
awesome at it.
I'm a failure.
It's stupid. Like, he even makes bad movies, and he still looks good.
Wow.
It's dumb.
All right.
I
Well,
hate him and love him at the same time.
well, I hope I stumped you here.
Okay.
All
So
right.
far, it's 0-1. I'm not keeping score, but
So
that's
far
what
it's-
it would be.
But not keeping score.
Nope.
All right. So this superpowered person goes by the moniker of Hammer Time, and he has the power to randomly generate a hammer out of nowhere of any type, size, make, and model to smash evil.
I actually want to read this person's comic book. No, you're kidding. That's so good.
So,
Alright.
is it MC Hammer, Tim Allen, but only acting as Tim the Toolman Taylor, or Gallagher?
I think it has to be Gallagher.
Why is that, sir?
Well, because part of Gallagher's shtick is smashing watermelons on stage.
Yes.
So I feel like he's already proficient with hammers.
It was
And
the
since
70s, we didn't know any better.
Yeah, so since he tried other stuff, like, you would always need a hammer if you're gonna, like, what if he's walking through Walmart and he's like, oh my god, vases!
Sledge-o-matic! Yes, that is totally 100% correct.
I also
It's
get...
not a chopper and a hopper, friends. It is the handy-dandy, takes care of all your needs in the household tool.
I also chose Gallagher just so everybody knows because Jack doesn't have a real strong familiarity with everything after the 1970s, so I assume
yes, that is
that
true.
that's where he was going.
But I'm not a time traveler.
This other superhero that I would like Jack to identify is just known only as the Update. This person, this superhero, has the ability to always be involved in something, even when one should not be sticking their nose in what they're involved in. They just always seem to be around and be there all of the time, involved in everything. Is this person Will Smith, Kellyanne Conway,
Ooh.
or Jesus?
What? And we've lost 28 viewers. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to have to say the Kellyanne Conway.
You win!
Yes!
Kellyanne Conway!
I got 1 out of 2.
Why? Because she reminds me of the software update.
How long's the agreement?
No, because every time I see her on TV, I'm like, no thank you, not me.
I don't need 32.61.1158 Apple iPod.
Gigawatts!
Yes.
Alright, go ahead with your other one. What do you got?
I like that.
Thank you.
Alright, so that the next one is known as The Voice. Okay? The
Blake
Voice.
Shelton. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, how does he do it?
That's amazing.
The Voice has the automatic power to elicit intense emotion from you. Whether it's fear, anger, or lulling you into a false sense of security.
And this person controls the emotion that they're trying to elicit from you based on it? Or do they just speak and like sometimes you start crying for like no
We'll go with that
reason?
one. Yeah, we'll go with that one.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a tough power. All right.
Yes. So, is it Jeremy Irons, Christina Aguilera, or Robin Williams?
I'm gonna go with Robin Williams for the win.
Oh!
Yeah!
Count it through the rain, baby!
Because
yes.
of all of his different voices.
It's not your fault, Sean. It's not your fault. Alright, so that's the humorous portion.
That was fun.
Yes,
Okay, good
that
job,
was fun.
Jack.
Alright, thank you.
High five.
Yeah!
I was looking at your elbow, that's why I almost missed.
Oh, by the way, folks, I think I've taken Bodhana-Cast a little too seriously. Just wanted to throw that. Hey! Actually, I slipped on ice. Where? Buying a board game coming out of a goodwill.
You're hardcore!
Yeah, hardcore gamer! Yeah!
Alright, so
Hulk
today...
smash! Legendary!
Wow. Today we are going to be discussing Legendary.
Yes.
Legendary is a game that was distributed by Upper Deck, designed by Devin Lowe. It was originally put out in 2012. Since then, has had so many expansions.
It breeds like rabbits, folks.
Every time a new expansion comes out, my wallet's like, oh. Yeah, so we're going to be discussing Legendary today. Now, Legendary is what is known as a deck builder game. Okay? So the purpose behind deck builders is that essentially everybody starts out at the same level. You have the same basic cards in a deck. And then as you play the game, you attempt to purchase, through some type of resource generation, better and stronger cards that you can put in your deck to make you more effective as the game goes on. Because as the game goes on, it usually also gets tougher, so you need that extra power throughout the game. Some of them are very competitive games where everybody's competing for resources that are finite. Some of them are cooperative games where you kind of discuss more of the strategy and how to beat the overall scenario that you're playing. Legendary has this weird middle ground that it falls into.
It's so incredibly wonderful for that middle ground.
So Legendary can either be done completely cooperatively if you're just looking to play and beat the game and have fun and enjoy it with your friends and whatnot. Or it can be more competitive, as a lot of the cards that you're trying to defeat during the game give you victory points that you can put in a pool and count up at the end of it to find out who is, and I'm not kidding, this is from the rulebook, who is the most legendary superhero. Right? So,
is that the Stinson clause?
yes.
Okay. Had to make at least one reference, folks.
So, like, you create these decks as you go through the game and buy these cards that you can use a whole different list of different strategies to do. Like, there's some that mathematically work out that they go together. There are cards that create a synergy or some type of usage where you can create card combinations if you can get them into your hand at the same time. Some of them are just really good. You know, like, I want that thing. So in Legendary, you are attempting to defeat a mastermind. Or we have legendary villains kind of splayed out in front of us. This is an alternate version where you actually play the villains fighting the heroes. Basic Marvel Legendary is heroes fighting villains.
Yep.
But these are all the same rules. So you're attempting to defeat a mastermind, some type of overarching character, and they have all the big ones in there. Your Red Skull, Galactus,
yeah,
Apocalypse.
If you've read it, you can play it.
Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff in there.
Yep.
So you pick the mastermind that you want to play against, and then you pick what's called the scheme. The scheme is really important because the scheme in the game is what dictates both the time frame that you have to defeat the game, as well as giving you much of the tension during the game. You're attempting to defeat the plot that the mastermind has cracked open. So the game gets set up. Probably the longest part of it is the setup to make the thing.
Yeah.
You create a villain deck that has all of the things that you're going to be fighting against, as well as some random people in the deck that you have to try to save during the course of the game. And then you create a hero deck, and the hero deck is comprised of the Marvel heroes, whatever characters you want to play, and there's so many of them at this point. Some of them have multiple versions of them.
Yes, I know Wolverine specifically. There's Wolverine 1 or Wolverine 2.
There's X-Men Wolverine, there's X-Factor, or X-Force Wolverine, there's Old Man Logan.
Just so it's for like, it's a three thing.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's probably other ones, I just don't remember them off the top of my head. I'm lying, I just don't want to make a list. So, you build the hero deck based on the heroes that you want to play. I often start games that I run for people by just asking them, who are your favorite heroes? And then I put those things together. You don't necessarily have to play with just your hero. That's one of the really cool things about it, because a lot of the heroes work really well together and have effects that you can use in combination with other heroes.
Well, and there's even some sets that are kind of designed around that purpose. Like they have and we'll talk about expansions and add-ons, you know, because like we said, this game breeds like rabbits. But
so as you make the hero deck and the villain deck, you start the game and you have basic cards in your deck, which are either Shield or Hydra agents if you're playing heroes or villains. These things are the basic components of the game that you will use to generate what you need to do other things and make your deck better. As the game goes, villains will move, and you just follow my hand. I know you can't really see the whole board, but villains start here and move across 5 what are called city spaces on the board. Each city space brings them closer to doing what's called escaping. As villains escape, it can make the game more difficult, but you are trying to prevent your villain deck from running out of cards. If it runs out of cards, you lose. Also, the plot or the scheme that you add into the game, that also gives you a lose condition. So,
Yeah.
some of the masterminds even have lose conditions.
What is this game?
There's 6. Your face.
Yes,
hates your
game
face.
hates your face.
There's 6 ways to lose and basically 1 way to win. You win the game by taking on the mastermind himself and defeating what are called his tactics. They are 4 face-down cards that are under each mastermind. So as you fight the mastermind, the cards under him get removed, and eventually he runs out of ideas. That's almost literally what this is supposed to play out as. Once you defeat the mastermind's tactics, which there are 4 of them, after the 4th one is defeated, you immediately win the game. And then if you're doing it competitively, you count up victory points. If you're doing it cooperatively, everybody high-fives and celebrates.
High fives, hugs, and cheesecake.
Yeah.
If you're a Golden Girls fan.
Cooperatively, really, this is 120% cooperative as far as a game. Because if you don't defeat the mastermind, nobody wins. Like, all those victory points that you're trying to get, they don't mean anything if you don't defeat the mastermind. So even competitively, you still have to work with everybody else to be able to at least win the game. So if you can be the one that wields the hammer of not bickering, that would be a really great idea.
So I mean that's kind of a general overview. I mean
this is a very I want to say this because of time wise, and I really want to get to the important stuff. This can be a very complicated game. Parts of it play like a Magic the Gathering or some type of collectible card game where there's different card effects that are going off at different times, and you get used to it. But it does take a little bit of getting used to. But it is a wonderful game for several different therapeutic components that we wanted to discuss today.
Yes.
So
I mean, just to kind of let everybody know in general, the game typically will play between 1 to 5 players. The sweet spot, as recommended by Board Game Geek, is 4 players. Ages 14 and up, which, I mean, honestly, I've seen kids younger than that play this, as long as adults are kind of helping with the reading and the math and things like that.
Bold-faced lie.
What do you mean?
Board Game Geek suggests 3
Really?
players.
Oh,
I suggested 4. I said 4 was the sweet spot. And 3...
I couldn't guess the hero, now I'm...
Well, I didn't want people thinking Board Game Geek said 3. They lied to me. That was a note that we changed. I think the sweet spot is 4 players.
Okay.
But that's also more for a cooperative experience to have the other players at the table. 3 is probably best if you're doing the competitive play.
So, public service announcements. Usually when we talk about any kind of game, we do want to say, people are like, you guys always talk about the positive benefits of all this stuff and all the good stuff they can do. Are there any risks? Are there any dangers inherent
there are some
in the play of this game? There are possible side effects. So, the first side effect that you could have is you might develop a cult-like following of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's possible.
It is very possible.
Also, because how much each of the cards cost is on the bottom right-hand corner of the cards. When you are looking at somebody else, you may find yourself staring at their left kneecap in an attempt to find out how much they are.
Your family might not allow you to use hammers in the house anymore.
It's possible.
Because of playing Thor too much.
Because poor.
Also,
you might, and I've actually done this. You're obsessed with figuring out your bosses and your supervisors' plot schemes and what they're attempting to do, and you start referring to all of their actual commands as master strikes after a little while.
And of course, one of the other things that I think acts as a very nice segue over into the benefits is you might actually read a comic book. So you might really pick something and explore the printed word. Print is not dead.
I don't understand what they are. What are these comic books you speak of?
Well, you see, Bobby, in the ancient times, man used to put his words upon parchment that was dried.
Shut your mouth!
It's true, I can't deny it, I can't deny it. Alright, so as we said, this is where we go into the portion of the show where we talk about the skills and the benefits. So, we are going to be doing some focus episodes in the future about each of these areas because Bodhana Group actually has a hero of each of these qualities that kind of represents what these are, and they're things, we'll talk about them like critical thinking, education, social skills. These are kind of the general ways that games are beneficial and helpful. So what we do is we pick the ones that we feel best match with the game that we are reviewing and bringing to your attention, and we kind of express how through the mechanics of what the game does, how it's building those skills, and you don't even necessarily need to tell somebody like, okay, Johnny, when you do that attack, you're going to be using math, see? First, what parent talks like Edward G. Robinson? So Jack's record for 30s and 40s vocal repetition, on point, every episode a different staple of
Galactic is running across this whole city, see? We're going to go over and we're going to fight him, but we're going to do it with Fantastic Four on the Civil Service, see?
That's just crazy talk. So
Need to get that on my system after you.
Most definitely. Why don't you take the first one? Because you are. If you don't know, if you ever get the chance to meet the captain in person, he is quite a card master. Like literally, he really understands a lot of the mechanics and the interplay with any kind of deck builder or collectible card game or anything like that. So. Do you want to take the whole, our first one, which is critical thinking?
I think probably the weirdest thing that I've ever been told is that I'm akin to a beautiful cardboard. I love card games. I get them. So the critical thinking portion of this game really comes down to deck building strategy. There are so many articles. Like seriously, look them up. Just look up deck building strategies. They're all there. Okay, but for this particular game, with critical thinking, you have a certain number of resources that you have to pick from, and you want to build the strongest deck that you can. So you're looking for cards that share either symbols that you can use together, or keywords or abilities that mesh together, things of that nature. I'm going to give you just one example that I can think of off the top of my head. There's a character named Cyclops, one of the X-Men, just in case people don't know who these people are. Cyclops' whole little kit, each character comes with 14 cards that get added together into the hero deck. Cyclops' whole shtick is having to discard a card from your hand to be able to do something cool, which is fine. Except later, Cyclops gets a more powerful card that says that when you discard this card from your hand, immediately put it back in your hand. So that essentially means that I can discard this repeatedly ad nauseum to do everything else that I want to do, and then still be able to play that last card for its very powerful number on it.
High strategy. Right?
So other characters also have synergies where they make you discard cards to do things occasionally. So if Cyclops is teamed with any of those characters, now with this one card, you can essentially fuel all of these different effects doing the same thing. And it just takes a little bit of putting together like that kind of a strategy. And that's one of the basic ones that I can mention. There's ones that, are definitely more complicated, but the cards work in that fashion. So as you're purchasing cards, you want to pay attention to what they can do and how they work together. You also have to manage the size of the deck that you're building. Because with Legendary, you only get 6 cards a turn. So as you're drawing these cards, unless you can draw more during your turn, you only have 6 options. If you start building a deck and you're buying a whole bunch of cards and putting them in just because, like, I want all of the Black Widows! Like, that's fine, that's cool. But if you have, like, 40 cards in your deck and you only get 6 a turn, those really good cards you're not going to see as often. So you want to make sure that you're balancing it out with some way to either draw extra cards and or to be able to do what's called KOing cards in your deck, which is removing them from your deck. Because eventually you're going to want to get rid of the average Joes that you start with because you're going to get more powerful things. So there's a balance with that you have to work in as well. And then there's making decisions on your turn. When you play the cards, playing them in a specific order.
Yes.
sometimes it can come down to something as simple as, do I buy a card first and put it in my discard pile so that I can then draw it with something else that I've played? Oh my god, I've gone cross-eyed. Right? So it can get very deep with this kind of a thing, and that's something that I really find thrilling, because you could almost say with every board game out there, Jack and I have actually run into this when we're planning out what we're going to review. Like, yes, critical thinking is part of the game, because you have to critically think about a decision that you have to make.
Who knew there was strategy and risk?
So really what we want to do is we want to highlight where critical thinking really applies like in a different manner than most other games. And really with every deck building game that you could play, critical thinking is a high component of it.
Well, and one thing that kind of goes into what you're saying, I mean, one of the things that, again, I mentioned we're going to talk about, there's so many different various expansions and add-ons, and there's also different versions that we're going to talk about. And one of the cool things about that, I think, for critical thinking is every expansion, like, it's pretty much, what are you, just selling me new cards? Like, new scheme twists and stuff like that? So the idea is, let's try to figure, this new expansion has now added a new mechanic. So now I gotta rethink my whole strategy here. So critical thinking, very heavy, especially with those add-ons and stuff like that. So, next area, which James already kind of touched on here and there, is definitely the social skills aspect of this game. You're going to find that pretty much mostly with our different collaborative games that are out there, but when we talk about being collaborative, this involves a lot of social skills and a lot of, specifically a lot of discussion, cooperation, a lot of compromise, a lot of elements where, like James said, when you're planning out your move ahead of time, you're freely open to discuss, like, okay guys, we got this on the board right now, who thinks they can take out what's out there in the city to avoid so-and-so? So you have to strategize. Not only so you can win, but also so you can get the most effective use of the cards that you have in your hand and from what's out there on the board. So in terms of that ability to cooperate and collaborate, like, that's a huge social skills thing, because it's about listening to ideas that may differ from your own.
Yeah.
Which, especially if you're like, no, I can take out the bad guy, but you're like, yeah, but if we do it this way, this will happen. So now you're also advocating what your position is, so you're speaking up for your ideas and you're compromising. There's so many good things that, again, you don't have to front load this, like, we're going to play this game to learn how to make more friends. But the game itself contains this kind of under the surface that helps develop a lot of those social skills that, we always want to work on, because we got to learn to get along better with people.
So we could talk about also like some of the education aspects of this. Yeah. There's very basic education stuff, the math, right? Just arithmetic, adding, subtracting. You have to count up how much attack you're generating this turn and how much recruitment you're generating this turn. So you can add up those numbers and understand how they work and be able to know what your totals are. And that's some of the very, very basic stuff.
Yeah.
But something that I want to kind of put a spotlight on here, organizational skills. A lot of times with educational stuff, like, we just think about, is there history, is there geography, is there math, that sort of thing.
Right.
Let's talk about organization. We mentioned that there's a lot of different expansions for this game. So as the game gets larger, because there's so many different types of cards in this game, there's villain groups, henchman groups, masterminds, schemes and scheme twists, heroes, bystanders, sidekicks, wounds. Right? And that's not even all of them. So
all the things.
As you get more cards, you want to have this stuff organized so that you can quickly set it up as you play. So to be able to do that, you want to have not only the space to be able to keep all of the cards, you also want to be able to like if you want to sleeve them so that you can protect them with card sleeves, plastic sleeves, you can get them virtually anywhere. Some of them are fairly cheap. If you want logos on the back, they're expensive. Don't do logos. That's just dumb.
Yeah, it's
my apologies to
the expansions.
My apologies to businesses that make logos for the backs of card sleeves. You're wonderful people. We're not saying anything against you. So Legendary does come with dividers that you can use to separate all of the cards, and it does have a decent amount of space. If you're going to own everything, you're going to need alternate storage, but then being able to effectively organize all of your cards and put them in order and have them ready to go, it takes a little bit of effort, especially after the game, putting everything back together, making sure that the cards all go with what they're supposed to go with, and you're not mixing teams or anything like that. So organizational skills, believe it or not, this game teaches it, which is kind of cool. And then we wanted to talk a bit about initiative, which Jack, you want to go ahead with that?
Yeah, sure. Initiative is basically the idea of developing this ability for a person to kind of calculate risk versus reward. So taking initiative is about taking chances, taking a gamble on something. So when we talked about, earlier with which cards to go into your lineup, there's some critical thinking in there, but there's also a risk and reward. It's kind of like what we would call, like in business, like a cost-benefit analysis, right? So we're talking about, well, if I use my
you
to
all
do this.
fancy.
Yeah, look at with my book learning.
This is my CBA.
The idea is that I'm basically deciding how to make the best use of my time, and you may not always make the best choice, because that kind of feeds into the last one, which this game, when we said earlier in a joking manner, it's kind of like a gamer phrase, you said like, oh my god,
this game hates our face. Yeah.
Part of that is one of the last skills that this game very definitely can build up, which is resilience. And resiliency is basically the idea that you're kind of rolling with the punches, right? Like things don't go exactly how you wanted them to. In simpler games, it's, I rolled a 1 instead of a 6, oh my gosh, But in here, if a villain escapes, some villains have escape clauses. That means, like, if they escape from the city, they do certain things.
A bad thing
that are horrible. Oh, they're
also
horrible.
with the basic idea of cards, there's an inherent randomness.
Yes.
In decks. You don't know what's coming off of the top of that villain deck. It could
or from what's your own deck.
Yeah, it could be a Master Strike. It could be another villain that's going to make everybody march down the city. Maybe they capture one of the bystanders that are in the deck, and now you have to rescue people on top of defeating villains.
Yeah. Which might make them more difficult to defeat.
Your environment constantly changes, and with that, you have to be able to roll with those punches.
Yeah, which I mean, like you said, this game it's one of those things that I think resiliency is actually kind of goes hand in hand with deck builders in general. Is that you start off on that kind of slow curve where, like, because you're building up, it's very like, oh, I can't do anything, we're just watching the city pile up, but it's about not giving up. Which I think fits very well into the heroic finale.
How many times I've had to tell people during a game of Legendary, guys, it's okay, villains are going to escape, we're going to get overrun for a little bit, we'll come back.
And that is a very good lesson, especially if you're talking about young children. Learning that, I hear a lot, when you talk about gaming and you specifically talk with parents and educators, a lot of people are very quick to say things like, oh, kids, they can't handle nothing, they can't, it's all about skill building and development. And if you can teach a person to be able to deal with adversity in the context of a game, that whole idea of it's not a big deal, or, hey, I know we've had games where we're like, yeah, let's just reset it and try again, because we kind of, and that's okay.
That decision is more based on our free time as adults than it really is about anything else that's going on.
That is true as well.
But with kids, that ability to learn that sometimes things are going to be really tough in the beginning, and I know if I stick it out and I put some effort into it, not only am I going to succeed, but it's going to feel that much better when I do, because I've overcome said obstacles in the first place.
Or it might cause me to develop more critical thinking in that I'm rethinking what my strategy was, what cards I tried to combine. So there's a lot of the ways that of course these skills are all going to work together, you know what I mean?
This is one of my favorite games ever, and I can't say enough nice things about it. I could continue to go on, but we don't have time. So what I want to do is I want to kind of discuss some of the takeaways that Jack and I have, or some things that we can do that you can do when you're playing this game to kind of vary it up, or make it more fun, or get some additional pull out of it. One of the things, if you're at all familiar with comic books or comic book stories, there are so many. This is my main thing. I run a lot of tournaments for this, and my tournament scenarios are based on actual comic storylines, and or storylines that I can build with these heroes and villains. I'll take Kingpin from Daredevil, and Kingpin is the mastermind, and he's doing some kind of a crime spree or a crime wave. And I'll include, like the street villains from like the streets of New York, and things like that. And I'll basically build a group that Kingpin would be fronting. And then for the heroes, I'll actually pick heroes that would fight Kingpin: Spider-Man, Daredevil, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, Netflix. Like any of those people would totally fit.
You can't take on Netflix, you're daft, man!
and I'll create a scenario based on that, and it gives that sort of like storyline familiarity, and you get a little more immersed in it when you really feel like, God, I could picture this in the pages of a comic book, and it's super fun to do stuff like that, and it creates different ways to play the game, even though there's always a different way to play the game in the first place. So more traction is always good. Also, read a book.
Yeah.
Right? These things came from source material that were called comic books. And the reason Jack made a joke about this earlier, it drives me insane that everybody tells me all of the stuff that they know about these characters. I talk to people that are familiar with them because of movies and TV shows, and they're like, oh yeah, the history of the character works like this. And I'm like, no! This character's 45 years... Pick up a comic, you Philistine! So I get that a lot. So
Philistine, now who's making the educated references,
yeah,
right?
I'm good sometimes.
Oh.
I read.
Well,
and I want you to too. I want you to as well. Tutu is a weird thing.
Tutu? No, we're ballerinas. No, I mean, coming on the heels of that is also the idea of you could even creatively engage someone, like, writing a story about, the way that this happened, or even just having a kid creatively explain how something worked, like, oh man, how would that look in a comic, what would that, so it's that kind of a creative writing exercise like that. I mean, we talked about utilizing this, because, I mean, it is great source material, like you said. I mean, heroes are very accessible right now. They're very much in the what is that fancy French word? The public eye.
It's the public eye.
They're very much in the zeitgeist.
Yeah,
that's what,
because
that's
of
French.
Because of the
zeitgeist is French.
You're going to keep rambling. Because of the ability for this to be so accessible now with all of the mass media that it has around it, it also makes it more accessible for parents.
Yes.
Who their kids might be really into it, maybe they want to sit down and play with it because they want to learn something else about what their kids are doing. So, in that respect, totally cool. You can also take heroes or villains that you have and discuss some of their drawbacks, like reasons why maybe super speed's not so fun. I don't have any of them. Super speed's amazing, but if there were drawbacks, I don't know them.
That's because you love the Flash.
But maybe we could just I love the Flash.
Oh yeah.
You can champion or rep a certain team. Like if you really like the Avengers, you guys could build scenarios where everybody has to play their own team.
So playing the Avengers, you could assemble your deck.
Yes, you could.
Hey-o. Oh, sorry. So, thanks. Thanks. I needed that. Like we had kind of said a little bit earlier, I mean, there's a lot of expansions and add-ons, and actually you're seeing some of the different versions of Legendary that have come out kind of after.
This is so grown. They have so many different expansions for, I just want to name a couple, like Paint the Town Red, which was a Spider-Man expansion, Fantastic Four, which obviously was an Avengers expansion. You just let me get
there's tons.
Deadpool, X-Men. Yeah, there's so many different expansions that come out for the game that have grown it that they then decided to do what's called the Encounters series, where they had other properties that they wanted to use this same type of engine. So everything we've talked about still applies to these other games. They did one for Predator, and they did one for Alien. And then in Predator, it gave you rules so that you could have Alien versus Predator, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's insane.
And then one of my favorite TV shows ever, they made one for Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yep. There's
they also have one for Big Trouble in Little China.
Yeah.
And then they did produce one for Firefly. We were going to have it here, but shortly into the delivery service, it got canceled.
Let the angry letters come in. Let the angry letters come in.
I'm feeling heat right here.
So we're gonna do kind of another little short outro bit here.
Love you, Firefly.
Before we do here, if you could make your own Legendary encounters, because obviously every property can be touched. What would be your dream encounters game?
So the one that I keep talking about that I want to see is Back to the Future. encounters. But what I would like to do, like each encounters game essentially adds a new mechanic to the legendary universe. So I thought it would be really cool to have something where you can manipulate time during the game. So like a bunch of the cards would have some kind of like a time stream or a flux capacitor symbol on it, and then an effect after the flux capacitor. Every card that you play from your deck has a number at the bottom of it that gives you a miles per hour that you're generating during your turn. And if you ever actually generate 88 miles per hour during your turn, you get to pick and activate like a time effect on one of the cards that sits on the board.
Oh my god.
Like, I just thought that would be so cool to have all these different effects that you can do and then like be able to trigger it by 1.21 gigawatts.
That's brilliant because, and again, I mean, obviously I kind of knew about that idea. I mean, just the whole idea of having like 50s Doc Brown versus like 80s Doc Brown, or all the different
Wild West Doc Brown,
right? All the different Biffs, Mad Dog Cannon, and all that. I mean, it's oh my gosh, that's absolutely brilliant.
Well, and you can also dig into the other stuff that they've created around Back to the Future with video games and things like that, where you've had other villains. Like, there's been books and other games. Telltale Games has a series on it.
Oh yes.
There's all kinds of stuff that you could dig into to make a really cool legendary encounter.
Nice. I would actually like to see, and I know that there's, just like you say about all the different IP for Back to the Future, I mean, IDW did a bunch of games. There's a dice game and then a board game based around the property. I think, even though there is a plethora, and yes, Hefe, I do know what a plethora is,
Good.
Of games in the Star Trek universe, I would still love to see an Encounters based in that universe, because
like an Encounter Star Trek.
Yes, Encounter Star Trek I think would be genius. Like, and you could even
As
have
a captain, I enjoy that.
As I figured you would, sir.
Yeah.
You could be able to play like, I'm going to play myself, because James Kirk. But I mean, think about it. You could start by having like a toss box, and then have like a Star Trek: The Next Generation set, so which features essentially.
Oh yeah, each of the TV series.
And each episode could be your Steam twist,
yeah,
and then all the masterminds are like, "Gone!" So there's so many.
And that has to be Khan's Tactics. It's not even. It's just a blank card that says Khan on the.
No, you make the player yell Khan. That's
part of the ability.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah, that's cool.
And that got me to thinking of a crossover game, which maybe only I would like. So
I feel like you're probably true.
So you have Back to the Future encounters, and then you have Star Trek encounters.
You're getting weird.
I'm getting very weird. And both of those have one thing in common, and that is the Hollywood powerhouse.
Well kept hair.
That is no.
Okay.
That is Christopher Lloyd. Christopher Lloyd encounters. Here to play some Reverend Jim. What? Exactly.
Cost me.
That's just as silly to say. But he's been in so much. It's absolutely ridiculous. Think about it. Christopher Lloyd encounters.
I have to go IMDb this now.
Yes, that's clearly a game to buy for your parents. None of the young people would play. Because they're like, who's Christopher Lloyd?
Yeah.
But
why don't you tell them where to find information about us?
Yes,
and our other friends.
that would be some awesomeness right there. So if you are interested in finding out more about therapeutic gaming and what you can do to bring that into your local community or your practice if you're a professional, please feel free to email us at www.thebodhanagroup.com. You can also visit www.thebodhanagroup.org.com. .org. It was a Dr. Evil reference. To basically go to our website, and you can find out a lot of information about the heroes that I mentioned earlier, the little kind of avatars of therapeutic gaming. There's pages for each of those talking about these skills, and there are some game recommendations on there. Additionally, we have a Facebook page, which is the Bodhana Group, obviously. But we want to give an even bigger shout out here and say thank you, as always, to Paul and Alex and the Wicked Turtle Network, which we are very, very, very joyously a part of. They are doing all of our filming, all of our production, and you can also find them on the web. You can look for them, Wicked Turtle Network, on Facebook, and you can follow all their wonderful content. One of the biggest things that's kind of like one of the most amazing for them is that they very recently have done some incredible interviews. If you are a wrestling fan, it was, Jack Swagger, We the People. They are also upcoming, are going to have some meet and greets with Ron Simmons. Damn!
I didn't know if we were going to be allowed to say that.
Beavers build them. It's fine.
Okay.
And also the boogeyman.
For those of you that don't know, he's a painted up guy that eats worms. It's a fantastic
So he's
gimmick.
like a Beverly Cleary book. Come to the ring.
Fantastic gimmick.
Beverly Cleary, ask your parents. I don't know if she's still popular with kids, but sincerely our thanks to them. They donate their time not only to filming and trying to wrangle James and I into like hello.
They're doing it right now, Jack.
Yeah, you're looking into my soul. And at that point, with soul licking, we want to again thank all of you for joining and tuning in today. I am Jack Berkenstock.
And I'm James Kirk.
And we have been Gaming with Intention, the Bodhana-Cast. Catch us next time for a very special game. But all of our games really are special.
The Two Amigos.
Oh wait, you're doing the whole sitcom freeze frame thing, right? Well, I guess they'll never mess around with that again.